Hi everyone, it's Dr. Hannah, nurse practitioner, and today I'm here with Dr. Tara Grace Perry. She is a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine. She specializes in providing customized holistic care for physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual healing. For 23 years, Dr. Perry has successfully treated celebrities, Olympians, first responders, world record holders, doctors, scientists, teachers, and moms, dads, and kids. She has been featured on Lifetime Television, in the Los Angeles Times, the UCLA Bruin, Fox Sports West, CosMed Magazine, KRLA, KLAA, and many others. For 10 years, she's taught at the #1 acupuncture college in California. In 2000s, Dr. Perry was chosen to be the first acupuncture teacher at the famous Arthur Ashe Center at UCLA. This was a landmark introduction of acupuncture care to the UC students in California, which became a huge success and continues until today. Some of Dr. Perry's testimonials include America's favorite TV mother, Florence Henderson. She stated on national television that Dr. Perry had, quote, saved her life many times. And the Tony Award Broadway star Ben Varon credits Dr. Perry for helping him recover from a severe injury. She performed the acupuncture for David Duchovny for the cover of Esquire magazine. She was also referenced in the landmark fertility book by doctors Wissot and Meldrum as helping them get some of their most difficult cases pregnant. So without any further ado, I am blessed to have Dr. Perry here with me today to discuss all the wonderful modalities that she does. So hi,
wow,
Dr. Perry.
that's an amazing introduction. I can't believe I managed to get that in all those years.
It's definitely quite a biography, and I'm sure you're going to continue building on it.
Thank you, Hannah.
Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about with you is acupuncture and cupping. So can you tell me and our audience basically what are some of the benefits that you can get from acupuncture and cupping?
Cupping, fortunately, really got its full-on exposure to the world stage when Michael Phelps was at the Olympics and winning all the gold medals, and he had all these purple spots on his body, so the internet just exploded with interest. Cupping has actually been all over the world in many, many different cultures. I've got patients from Korea and Russia and Nicaragua, literally all over the planet, who told me that they saw their grandparents doing it or their parents doing it. So it comes from many, many different cultures, and it's got a hundreds-year-old history. So a lot of people have figured out this works. So what it does is it pulls the stagnation. Anytime a nerve signal is not getting from point A to point B at the speed that you want it to, like in Western medicine, they do a nerve conduction velocity test, that means there's pathology going on there. So the cupping pulls out the stagnation and allows that nerve signal to function better, which is when healing happens. So the combination of acupuncture and cupping is really a fast way to heal all kinds of problems.
That's amazing, and I mean I can attest to that as well, since I've done it with you, and I absolutely feel like a lot has been released from those areas of pain that I had.
Actually, your story was great. Do you want to share that with your listeners? It was a perfect story. You don't have to.
Put me on the spot. Sure. So, I mean, I woke up one morning and I had very severe 10 out of 10 pain in my shoulder. I don't even know what happened. I don't remember even having an injury. And I called you up that day and I just asked, if there's any way I could see you. And I went to you, and after a cupping and acupuncture session, literally I was 0 out of 10 pain. The pain was just completely gone. It was just fantastic. So you absolutely have some magical hands and definitely have some gifts.
I was also very fortunate, Hannah, because I came across this lineage of teaching. My teacher's teacher's teacher was a fellow who escaped mainland China during the Cultural Revolution, and he went to Taiwan and became very famous for treating 150 Taiwanese soldiers per day with just a minimal number of needles. He did not have children, which for us was a benefit because they usually pass it on only to family members. So since he didn't have children, he passed it on to 2 people. One of them was the first acupuncturist in the state of California, and that's a whole story, a wonderful story. But she took on as a student my teacher, who's a blonde lady like I am, and they actually fly her to China to teach acupuncture in China because of this very special lineage that gets great results with very few needles, which is what I did on you, by the way.
Yeah, yes, I remember it. It wasn't a lot, but whatever it was definitely quite powerful. So to my next question, does acupuncture hurt? You know, that you're putting needles in the skin. So a
I'm
lot
so glad you asked that question, because the idea of pain scares a lot of people off so unnecessarily, because 99.9% of the time, the pain somebody's suffering with is so much worse than any discomfort they would get from the quote unquote needles. I would like to call them fibers or filaments, because they're hair thin and you can actually pop them into a child without the child even barely being aware of it. In fact, there was a wonderful cover to one of the acupuncture journals with a baby with needles in him smiling at the camera. So it's not traumatic. It's not a big deal. Different acupuncture lineages kind of practice it a little bit different. In Japan, they even get so subtle with the needles that it's almost just like a tapping of the skin, because there's something about a point, hitting an acupuncture point, that it may be something to do with sacred geometry, but it's very impactful. It's surprising how impactful a result you can get from. In fact, when I first had my first patient, I went through acupuncture school, and when I first entered clinic, I got a patient who had lupus. And I just, I was a scared student who had never treated a patient before, and I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to help this person with a handful of needles and some herbs? And, applied the principles, and lo and behold, the lupus patient got better. So now even I've had doctors refer me lupus patients because it works great.
Yeah, and I can even attest to that. When I had my first session, I didn't even feel it at all. If anything, after I felt amazing, I had pain relief. So it was just fantastic.
Well, let me add to that, because most patients, because it has such a wonderful effect at bringing down the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, and elevating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your digestion is functioning, hormones are functioning, immune system is functioning. Because it has that effect, I would say most of my patients leave my office more relaxed than if they had gotten a full body massage. I used to have busy executives from Fox who would come to see me when I was up in Beverly Hills, and they called it their mini vacation because they couldn't get away for a real one.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful healing modality. That's why I'm so excited to speak about it with you. Do you know if there's any science behind the treatment?
Oh, yes. Well, when I got started, there actually wasn't. I've been doing it for 23 years. So at that time, it was a big deal that the World Health Organization came out and said, okay, it's good for, a whole bunch of categories. But considering the vast array of things that it treats, it was an okay study, but it really could have been better. It said that it was good for morning sickness and a few other things, but it wasn't a great study, I don't think. Since then, they've done massive studies and have, studies, as you know, because you're a doctor as well, they have to be done in a certain way to get a result and an answer that makes sense and is valuable. So now there's just incontrovertible evidence that acupuncture outperforms the standard of care for many, many problems. And again, a lot of it's because it has a strong effect on the biggest nerve, which is your largest nerve in the body, which regulates all kinds of things. It increases, it decreases pain, it decreases inflammation, it increases the flow of neurological activity and blood flow in the body. So that's going to, again, boost the healing effect. I think that answers that.
Yes, it does. That's fantastic. And I'm so excited that they're actually starting to do the evidence on it, and that there has, had evidence built up since then. So it's very important, especially in our Western society. People, they want to say, show me the science, show me the evidence.
It doesn't exist until there's a double-blind study.
Absolutely.
Interesting story. The way we got into UCLA, because there wasn't a lot of double-blind studies at the time that supported it. There just wasn't. The studies weren't there because these are very expensive and they have to be done. It's very difficult to double-blind a physical medicine. I mean, there's no double-blind studies for surgery. There's no double-blind studies for physical therapy. There's, once you engage another person in that three-dimensional world, it's really challenging to double-blind. But people have gotten very creative with it, and they've gotten some, excellent proof as to how acupuncture works.
Yeah, and I mean, there is a lot to say coming from experience and the patient populations you've treated, and just your case studies in general, what you've just found in your own practice. That's also very valuable.
So the way we got into UCLA, because there weren't any double-blind studies, we went and we treated the people who made the decisions there. And when they realized, oh my God, my pain's gone, really, really quick, and people seem to want this, they said, all right, come on in. And lo and behold, the doctors loved us because we were able to help them with, patients that weren't responding terribly well to conventional care.
Huh. That's a smart person who went that route.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay. And
it's anecdotal if it's happening to somebody else, but when it happens to you, it's evidence, right?
I've heard that you have helped some people avoid surgery. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, that's my favorite thing in the world. I'm so glad you asked me that question. My favorite thing in the world. In fact, I think I've got that front and center on my website. So I love helping people avoid surgery if it's possible. I mean, some people do need it, but I've had as much as 9mm disc bulges in the lower lumbar area with severe radiculopathy and pain. They were scheduled for surgery, but they couldn't get in to see their surgeon right away. So I treated them a couple times a week, and in 6 weeks, they no longer needed the surgery. They're like, well, I don't have that much pain, and I really don't want to get surgery. So they went ahead and canceled their surgery. I've had people bone on bone in the hip. And again, they were set to see one of the best surgeons in Beverly Hills. I didn't think they could avoid it. They didn't think they could avoid it. The surgeon didn't think they could avoid it. 6 weeks later, they're going, you know what? My range of motion's pretty good. I don't have much pain. I really would rather cancel my surgery. So those are, I had somebody that was crushed by bay doors because he was a mechanic on trains. And he was told he would need a shoulder replacement, and he didn't want that. So I said, all right, I'm always willing to try because it's so worth doing non-invasive procedures. And I saw him for twice a week for 3 or 4 months, and then he started physical therapy, so he was doing both, which are quite complementary. And in a year, but felt fine, good range of motion, didn't need the surgery. And that's just a few.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Really. Okay, so we've talked about acupuncture and cupping, but that's not all that you do. You do something called RTT. So tell me a little bit about that.
This I'm super excited about because consciousness has always amazed me. And the subconscious is a big part of who we are. In fact, it was determined that that's about 90% of how our brain operates. So harnessing the effects of the subconscious and getting that totally in line with what we want to achieve in our lives is outstanding. So RTT was developed by a woman named Marissa Peer. She is famous all over the planet. I would say that she is to hypnosis what Tony Robbins is to NLP. She took a body of work and made it her own. She took the best of everything that was out there and developed a very powerful way of doing hypnosis. Because I've had hypnosis by some of the top people on the planet, and it was okay. But when I had this particular type done, it rocked my world. So once I was exposed to that, I said, I've got to go learn that. So I was trained personally by Marissa. And she is phenomenal. She got her start with Jane Fonda back in the day, and she got famous for solving bulimia and anorexia in a single session. She's worked with the studios, with celebrities that had all kinds of problems. She was voted Britain's #1 therapist. So she has definitely cultivated very, very powerful ways to dialogue and connect with the subconscious mind in a way that brings about significant powerful, lasting behavioral and emotional changes. Do you want to comment on that? You've had some experience.
I thought I was interviewing you. Like I'm being put on the spot again. Okay, so I mean, it's really powerful. I mean, I've never been hypnotized before, and just what comes up is just, some things that you just don't even think about that are affecting you in your daily life. And once you tackle those and you address those, I mean, it could just be so powerful. I just didn't even realize that those thoughts were weighing on me and how they were affecting me up until this point in my life. Even things in childhood that I just have forgotten about, just
so that's the typical reply that I hear, and that's the experience that I had myself. It's like if you think you want one thing, but you've got conflicting messages that are in the subconscious because of patterns that got set earlier in life. If you don't know what those patterns are, if you're not in touch with them, then it's almost like you've got your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. So you think you're going at a certain pace and a certain rate and with a certain energy, but you're kind of going in the opposite direction as well, or a conflicting direction. So I had the same experience, that there were blockages that I had on various issues, and I was so surprised to find out where those were locked in. And because this is working with the subconscious mind in a relaxed way that allows those patterns to become evident and to be worked with, I've worked with people that had even rather intense childhood trauma from like medical issues as toddlers, and they were not able to access that with normal conventional talk therapy that is more up in the higher consciousness. But when you go into the subconscious, patterns come up that become recognizable, and they can be reworked so that your experience of life, your experience of calmness, of safety, of being good enough, of being strong enough, of being safe, are all brought up to the standard that you would like it to be at.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful once you tap into that unknown subconscious. It's just amazing. So can you just walk me through a session? What should people expect when they go for an RTT session?
I'm glad you asked me that, because people think about hypnosis that, I mean, there's a lot, just like needles, there's all this fear around needles, but they're not really needles. The same is true with RTT. I've had people say that, it really shouldn't be called hypnosis, because people think I'm going under, I'm not conscious. And that's not true. You're really conscious through the whole thing. You might be sort of drifting on that sort of dream state because you're relaxed, but, a hypnotist, I mean, there might be some outlying circumstance that I'm not familiar with, but somebody working with you to solve a problem, they don't have the ability to go in and grab your mind and make you do things you don't want to do. And because of Hollywood and Las Vegas, where people are, kissing fire hydrants and clucking like chickens, people think that I somehow have the power to make them do those crazy things. And so that scares them, and that's normal. I would be scared too. But when you realize it's just going into this super relaxed state, because the brain waves are beta, which is the high functioning, and then the alpha, which is the chilled out meditative state, and then you've got delta and theta below that, which are your sleep states. So you're kind of drifting into low alpha, which is that learning, calm, meditative state, which just opens up the subconscious mind so that when you dialogue with it, you're getting recognition and recollections and answers to things that you wouldn't get if you were up in a higher beta state. Did I say that well?
Yeah. So how would a session work basically? I don't know. I just picture like somebody putting a clock in front of me and me just following it.
The person's just relaxed. You're talking them down, like walking down a staircase, or it can be down an elevator. There's various ways to do it. There's something called deepeners, where you just do some examples of making the hands feel a certain way, like one hand's holding a balloon, the other one's holding a bucket, or magnets, or like you chewed on a lemon and you can feel the saliva being burst into your mouth, because your body thinks that you have been exposed to a lemon. So all of those things just indicate that we are influencing our bodies based on what we're thinking. And then you usually regress to several scenes that have everything to do with why that issue is there. And then you piece together, it's like, you know, you do a little detective work, like what's the thread here? What is connected between this thread and what the person's dealing with? And then there are techniques to understand and recognize and affirm that, you know, that's old technology. It's like you've got an iPhone 2 and you have an iPhone 10, and the iPhone 10 doesn't operate very well on the iPhone 2 technology, which was put in place when you were a child. You know, you really want to upgrade to the iPhone 10. So the process is like upgrading to that new iPhone 10 by recognizing the patterns. There are methods to rework that. And once you've installed the new pattern, then I make a tape for the person to listen to once a day for the next 3 weeks. And that helps solidify the new neural activity that's been awakened, because the brain likes what's familiar and it doesn't like what's unfamiliar. So we want the brain to accept the unfamiliar and reject the familiar pattern that's not what you want. So in listening to that tape in a relaxed hypnotic state for the next 3 weeks, you help solidify those neural pathways. So for example, and this is neuroplasticity, if I were born with webbed hands, then the part of my brain that controls my hand would be all wired together. Nerves that fire together, wire together. And if I got my fingers separated in adulthood, that brain would start to branch out and develop new pathways. So it takes a little bit of doing. It's like learning to ride a bike because it's not familiar. So once you've seen that new pattern that you want, you install it, you want to keep reinforcing it so that it sticks.
And roughly how many sessions would somebody need to find?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. It's called rapid transformational therapy because it is designed to work quite quickly. Marissa is well known for solving things in a single session. And I have found that a single session has massively powerful effects. Even, you know, TMJ has cleared up a number of times. In fact, every case, I mean, I haven't done a ton of them, but headaches, anxiety, stress, relationship issues. I mean, one woman came to me and she says, you know, I just have this terrible relationship with my daughter, and it's a problem because I've got a grandchild that I care about and I have to interface with, and I can't really deal with her. Anyway, we did the session. We found out what that pattern was for her, and then we rewired it, and not a problem anymore. I had a woman who was a realtor about, I want to say she was 55 or 60. And I said, what's your magic wand issue? She says, well, I'd like to not second guess myself in every social situation, you know, which is a problem when you're a realtor. And we went back, and of course she second guessed herself because she had all these terrible things happen to her when she was a kid. And so we just rewired that, made the tape for her to listen to for the next 3 weeks. And I checked in with her 7 months later, and I said, how much of that issue is still there? And she didn't even realize it, but she's like, oh, well, it's gone. She says, it's just not an issue anymore. So, you know, those are several examples, but I have found it so powerful. And it's best to go in without preconceived ideas because it's surprising what comes up. And it's always very unique and very special to that person. And the outcomes are powerful and long lasting.
Sure. And I mean, within that, you actually answered one of my next questions, which was going to be, what conditions has it helped with, or what issues has it helped with? So you already answered.
Yeah, any kind of behavioral thing. It can be a relationship thing. Eating is a big one. A lot of people eat poorly because of an emotional drive. And if you adjust the emotion, then the behavior can, you know, go away much more easily. Because the brain is doing what it thinks it wants you to, what it thinks you want it to do. So if somebody's saying, you know, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, but I love, you know, ice cream and I love bread, and the best thing in the world is eating a chocolate bar. And so that's again having your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. You need to get that emotional need solved by things that actually do solve the emotion, and um, and take away that drive for an emotional need that's really not getting met by that substance.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting about the eating.
Yeah,
How,
eating disorders are a big one. Smoking is another one. I used to refer out for that because I know somebody very famous in that area, but when I found out how Marissa does it, it's so much more powerful, because if you can get the emotion behind the behavior and shift that, then the behavior can change. Because we all know, people know what's good for them, but why do they still continue to choose what's not good for them? Because it's solving an emotional need.
sure. Yeah, it seems like,
And it's a misinformed emotional need, because, smoking on a cigarette ain't going to solve anything. It's just going to give you a pile more problems.
yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely on board with that. So thank you for talking about RTT. I mean, I've never heard of this until, I came to you, and I just had such personal, amazing results. And obviously you're really helping a lot of people with this beautiful healing modality. So I'm really excited for people to learn about this option. Um, and, I'm really into biohacking and preventative medicine. And, I know that you do some type of anti-aging. So do you want to talk a little bit about, telomeres and aging, since you're an educator, and what modalities you use in anti-aging medicine?
And Hannah, I am a huge fan of what you do. You are an amazing biohacker, and I totally applaud what you're doing. So I've been into nutritional medicine my whole life. My father was on the board of the Price Pottinger Foundation, which is one of the oldest, most respected nutritional foundations in the country. He actually contributed a little bit of money that revealed what omega-3 oils were. That was based on Weston Price's work. He traveled all over the world in the 1940s, I believe, and he couldn't figure out why Eskimos could eat so much fat every day and none of them died of heart attacks. And he isolated something called X factor, which was discovered to be omega-3 oils. So I had the good fortune about knowing about that before any cardiologist had ever heard about it. Most cardiologists, I'd say. There might have been one outlier out there, but I'm sorry, what was your question?
My question was about if you want to talk a little bit about anti-aging and
Okay. So
telomeres.
nothing ages us faster than poor health, stress, toxic foods. In our society, we've gone from the average American consumed 15 grams of sugar a day in the 1800s to it's now 285. And it's this enormous assault on our body and our nerves. So getting that in check is one thing. Eating whole, fresh, organic foods and not a lot of processed foods, because as soon as you start processing things, it becomes like a foreign invader, and the body has to work so hard in order to accommodate that. So definitely getting on board with diet, which I love counseling people with. I like working with them to find out what's right for them. Chinese herbs have been shown to be amazing to lengthen telomeres. Astragalus is a great one. Gynostema is another one. But there's a whole treasure trove of Chinese herbs that do all kinds of wonderful healing, restorative, anti-aging things in the body. Chaga, for example, is a mushroom that's the beauty industry loves for skin. I'm coming up with another one. Schisandra is another one that is got a multitude of effects, and at one time it was really hard to get because the beauty industry had latched onto it and was consuming quite a bit of it. So there's a lot available. I love people to try different things and find out what makes them feel good, but it's so worthwhile to stack the deck in your favor in terms of anti-aging, anti-disease, anti-cancer. Getting older is not for the faint of heart. You have to take really good care of yourself, and that means mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. They've done studies that showed that they took older people, and one of the leading universities did this, and half of them went back and had a weekend getaway where they re-experienced their childhood. They actually went through the motions of being at that age, playing the games that they played, living the lifestyle, listening to the music that they listened to at that age. And then the other control group went back into, and they reminisced about the good old days. They were still old people, but they were reminiscing about the good old days. And they tested their biological markers, and the ones that were actually re-experiencing youth again had reversed the biological clock in their bodies, whereas the other group didn't. So what we think and how we operate with our conscious and subconscious mind actually impacts our cells.
The power of the mind is really something else. You're absolutely right on that point. So these herbs that you're talking about, these Chinese herbs and the mushrooms that you were talking about on the face, do you sell these? How do people get into experiencing these?
Well, I have an online pharmacy, so I can just put on there and send people an herbal prescription for whatever it is they want and make sure that they get really high quality stuff. It's really super, super important because I know people that do testing for nutraceutical companies and people who are in that business. Unfortunately, 90% of the stuff sold over the counter is not good. It's kind of not good. It's garbage. And I hope I'm not overstating that, but you really have to know the companies that you're buying from, because when you take I tell people that, if you go to the grocery store and you're buying beets, for example, you can see what vibrant, healthy, delicious, thriving beets look like. And you can see what beets that have been sitting there for 2 weeks and really should be thrown away look like. But once you put it in a capsule, you have no idea what's in there. You don't know what kind of soil it was grown on. You don't know how much heat was used in the extraction process. You don't know what the binders and the fillers are. So by the time you take a living substance and put it in a pill to consume, that has to be done with extreme thoughtfulness and care and testing to make sure that at the end of the day, you're getting a potent product that's bioavailable and doesn't have toxicity in it. So those pieces of information are really, really important. So when I put herbal prescriptions on my thing, I know that people are getting quality stuff. And as far as the mushrooms go, there's an array of mushrooms. There's reishi mushroom, there's lion's mane, which is great for your brain. There's chaga, which is great for your skin. There's cordyceps, and reishi, an interesting story. They used to depict the emperor of China as holding a scepter in his hand. Well, that scepter was actually originally a reishi mushroom. It was very revered, it was very precious, and it was reserved for the emperor. And now we get to take it whenever we want.
Wow, I definitely want some of those mushrooms. I want to keep my face young. I want to be young and vibrant forever. So after this, I definitely want to know a little bit more about the mushrooms. And obviously, you're very accomplished, and I trust you, and I know that you've done your due diligence and done the research in the products, and you stand behind what you've chosen. So I think it's really important to go to a trusted provider and somebody who really knows what needs to be in a supplement, and to find a real quality supplement, especially like you're saying, a lot of these are not FDA approved. You really don't know what's going into them.
Yeah.
So I'm 100% on
Some of them have actually really clever double-blind studies. For example, lavender is one of my favorite. I love essential oils, and my essential oil guy, collects these wonderful oils from all these exotic places in the world, and they have tremendous healing effects. Like eucalyptus is great for the lungs, and it's very antimicrobial. Wild oregano oil, you could likely travel across Africa and not get an infection because of the wonderful antimicrobial activity of wild oregano oil. Many times I've started to come down with a cold or flu, and I take that and boom, it's gone. Any kind of infection, it's really wonderful for. And then lavender is very soothing to the mind. It's very relaxing. I have a lot of my patients put it on their pillow at night, or you can take a bath in it. I usually have them breathing it when they're on the table. But one of the companies I work with actually creates lavender pills, and they double-blinded them against the benzodiazepine class of drug, which is the Xanax class of drug, and found that it's as effective without the side effects. And as you know, Hannah, the side effects for the benzodiazepines are really intense. They are very hard to come off of. This is like you're not on any drug at all. You just notice, I call them my little red happy pills, because you just notice that your mood is a little bit better and that your stress is lowered. So again, the magic of plants. We have such a wealth of healing modalities. And unfortunately, the way things are today, I mean, just turn on the television or the radio. I mean, what are all the ads for? They're peddling drugs. So it's smart to turn to nature, in my opinion, because nature heals without all the horrible side effects.
Sure. I mean, I'm a huge fan of lavender. I diffuse it at night right before I go to bed. I put it on my pillow also. I'm a huge fan, and that, plant medicine and also essential oils have very powerful healing properties, and it's always a nice, first step if you can do the non-invasive things first and see if they can work. I agree.
I am so grateful for the time that we've had together. I actually do have to go and treat a patient. Do you have another question? I can get one more.
No, this is actually the last question.
Oh, perfect.
So, I was actually just going to wrap it up. So we're right on board. And thank you so much. I'm so blessed to have had you today to interview you, to discuss your beautiful healing modalities. And thank you so much again. And hopefully everybody else can benefit from this information and maybe even incorporate it into their life as well.
I am deeply grateful to you, Hannah. I think you are a superstar in the health and healing world. And I look totally forward to seeing where your life takes you and all the wonderful lives and souls that you touch.
Thank you so much, Dr. Perry. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.